Good afternoon to you. Mark Sott of HurricaneTrack.com here. Tuesday now, the 24th of October, 2023. On the update today, mainly going to talk about Tammy. Yes, I think that it could intensify and it might make a run at becoming a major hurricane. The modeling out there indicating a couple of days of pretty favorable conditions in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So yeah, it is possible that Tammy could strengthen some, add a few more ace points, and maybe even become, as I said there, and as the thumbnail and title card suggests, maybe making a run at becoming a major hurricane. We'll take a look at that, plus Otis, plus Lola. Who's Lola? Well, I'll show you. I should have mentioned it yesterday, but hey, better late than never. First of all, satellite imagery here, the loop, courtesy of Tropical Tidbits. There is Otis starting to really come together. What is up with these rapidly intensifying hurricanes close to land now? It's happening with Mexico lately, and we've had it in the Gulf the last several years. It's becoming a thing, and it is not pleasant to deal with, that's for sure. This next feature here, Otis, I wasn't too worried about it a couple of days ago. Now, definitely looks like it's going to be quite impactful for this part of Mexico. Recon is en route to check it out, and we'll know more. It's a small hurricane, but it is going to pack quite a punch down there in southern Mexico as it makes landfall tomorrow. Meanwhile, in the Atlantic, there we have Tammy starting to wrap some deeper convection around a fairly well-developed center. And then we're going to have to start watching eventually, I'll talk about this towards the end of today's update, some kind of mischief trying to develop somewhere in here before all is said and done, whatever that means. Basically, between now and the next 10 days or so, I think something else could try to develop in the Caribbean, because the pattern is going to favor it. We're going to build the pattern first, and then we could potentially have something trying to develop down in this area. Again, we'll look at that towards the end of today's update. First of all, changed the background a little bit here, the satellite view as it's called. I don't know why they call it that, but there it is nevertheless. Kind of neat to look at. There's Otis. This will make landfall in Mexico, so let's zoom in on it and take a look real quick. And Category 1 right now, yeah, I think it's stronger than that. I'll show you on satellite in just a moment. But this is going to go in to make landfall in southern Mexico. What's cool about our interactive map is we can go in and we can change the background and the base map, if you will. And we get place names. If I can get this to go back. There we go. So where's it going to make landfall? Looks like it's going to come in to the Mexican coastline in a fairly sparsely populated area west-northwest of Acapulco, which of course is more populated, but sparsely doesn't mean nobody lives there. And you got these barrier islands down here, very similar to what you would see in South Padre Island and Padre Island itself in Texas, just to give you an idea of what the geography is down there. But then you've got these mountain ranges that come right down next to the coast, and then all kinds of river systems in here. So yeah, the flooding from this could be substantial. And then right at the coast here, it could pack quite a punch as it comes in. Again, Recon down there investigating. And a big reason why, look at that. On satellite, it's really popping out a well-developed eye, a very centralized area of deep convection, all the makings of a strengthening hurricane. So folks down here in Mexico where this is headed, I hope you're ready. You know, again, a couple of days ago, I wasn't too concerned, but these systems are behaving against what we hope they do. They're strengthening close to land and so forth and so on. So, yeah, we've got to be watching out for that for our friends in Mexico. Now, down here, got the remnants of very short-lived tropical depression number 21, rainmaker down here in parts of Central America. We can go back to the wider satellite animation. There it is, still down there milling around. Some feeder bands still reaching out into the Caribbean where water temperatures are still nice and warm. I'm going to tell you, it wouldn't surprise me if this energy makes its way over to the southeastern Pacific and tries to regenerate there in a few days. Everything is just pretty favorable all across this area right now because of the overall pattern. Yes, we've got fall and even some winter weather coming into the Rockies of the northwestern United States here, but still summer in the tropics, basically. I mean, not technically, but you know what I mean. The summer pattern continues, and the water temperatures are warm. The shear is light, despite the El Nino. And there you go. We have Otis. We've got XTD21. And then over here, of course, we have Tammy spinning along. Speaking of Tammy, let's go back to our interactive map, zoom out a little bit, and let's take a look at what Tammy is going to be doing over the next few days. I'm of the opinion that these 1s will eventually become 2s, and you never know. They might become a 3 at some point. The pattern looks pretty favorable over the next 24 to 36 hours for Tammy to intensify, and it could make the turn and approach Bermuda. This is the official forecast and the error cone. The modeling is just all over the place. This could end up coming in and being short and then turning out. It could come in well south and then head towards Florida as a much weakened system. A lot of different possibilities. This is just the official forecast as it stands now. There's a lot that could change. And so if you're in Bermuda and you see this headed your way, I wouldn't worry about it much more than being a little bit windy and maybe giving you some fresh water for your tanks or cisterns, whatever you call them over there. So no worries in terms of major impacts for Bermuda. But we'll watch and see what happens. I do think, and I'll show you why, that in this area through here, it could be substantially stronger than a 1. And as such, it's going to produce those swells that will make their way out and eventually reach the shores of the southeastern U.S., the northern shores of the Antilles down here as well. So surfers, you'll like it. Swimmers, especially in the warmer waters down here, be careful as those swells do come in. A close-up of Tammy. Yes, it is trying to wrap some limited deeper convection in here near that eye. It does have a ragged kind of an eye in there for sure. Upper level winds not perfect, but they're not too destructive either. Water temperatures underneath Tammy still warm. So yeah, I think this could strengthen and become a Category 3. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see this peak at 115, 120 miles per hour over the next 36 hours or so. That's what I'm going to go with. I think that it'll happen. Meanwhile, I should have pointed this out yesterday, but better late than never. University of Wisconsin tweet here about our cyclone in the southern hemisphere. It's reached Category 4 intensity, and it's impacting Vanuatu, but it's weakened, thank goodness, but still packing quite a punch down there. Lots of heavy rain. Pretty surprising this early in the season of the southern hemisphere tropical cyclone season for something to be this strong. Ben Knoll was talking about it yesterday, our friend Ben Knoll. He's doing some traveling in and around the islands of this area of the Pacific, and he was noting this as well. But notice too, it does spin clockwise because it's in the southern hemisphere. That's how that works. All right, modeling. Why do I think that Tammy will become stronger than a Category 1? Let me present the evidence. All right, let's drop me back out of the frame so you can focus on the map. The vorticity signature over the next couple of days looks pretty darn healthy in there. Okay, that's one of the things I really look at. That's the 5,000-foot structure. You know, the framework of it looks pretty darn healthy. Then we can actually look at the surface and see what the global model is suggesting, the GFS global model, right? And it's pretty robust overall. Drops it to 964, 965. It could be stronger than that. It develops what looks like a pretty well-defined eye in there. So just looking at the overall structure of the system, it's got a couple of opportunities there over the next 24 to 36 hours, and then it starts to weaken as the pattern changes around it. It approaches Bermuda, doesn't quite get there, and then tries to head off and then finally dissipate due to stronger upper level winds. So let's just move this out to 24 hours and let's look at the upper levels real quick, 200 millibars. So here's why I think it could strengthen. You got this nice area of upper level wind going away from the system, evacuating that air. What doesn't shear you makes you stronger. That's mine. I coined that just now, right off the top of the dome. You guys ever watch that Harry Mack guy that does those raps freestyle? Anyway, I've seen him show up in my Facebook reels from time to time. Once in a while, I'll come up with a good one. No raps, of course, off the top of the dome. And what doesn't shear you makes you stronger. I don't think I've ever heard that before. So that's mine. And it's true, because shear going across a system really can separate the thunderstorms from the low-level circulation, and the whole thing starts to fall apart because you've got to have that convection. But when the mass evacuation of air is just right, with that trough interaction, and there's the upper level trough right there. You think about Ian last year, Michael in 2018, the way the trough and the cyclone were in, sort of conjunction with each other, the way they were all situated, those systems were just right that they intensified significantly in a fairly short amount of time, because what does not shear these systems, if it didn't shear it, it could actually help to make it stronger. And I think that's what's going to happen with Tammy. But watch what happens as we go out into time. There's 36 hours, and it starts to get sheared more from the south. I know the upper level winds tend to relax to the north of it, but you lose the overall mechanism that ventilated it. And so by 72 hours, it's just not in a favorable position any longer, and it starts to weaken pretty substantially. Now pretty much caught up in that upper level trough. All right, so that's what the GFS shows. What about the Canadian? We'll look at just the low level vorticity with the Canadian, because it's got a little bit of a more interesting outcome. It keeps it well south of Bermuda. Bermuda is right here. I'll circle in an orange there. And so it keeps it well south of Bermuda, keeps that low level circulation intact. 96 hours later, yeah, it does bring it by day 5 towards day 6, the leftovers of Tammy into the area near Ormond Beach, Daytona, right? Possible. That is possible. I mean, we don't know. And you see the ridging up here to the north is pretty much intact, shallow ridging, but just enough that the Canadian solution is to bring this towards Florida. You also notice in the Canadian model here, as we take this out to about day 7, more activity trying to get together in the Western Caribbean, maybe some hints of something north of South America, and then big old Western Atlantic ridge, almost like a Bermuda high setting up. And that is concerning as we get later into the month. I mean, we're almost done, a week to go, and then we're into early November. Hurricane season is not done yet, and I'll show you why. We're going to go back to this, get this primed so I can show you, take this out to a week and get this ready for the end. But first, let me show you the Euro. I did, by the way, figure out after yesterday, I was like, how do I get the surface pressure? I forgot. It's part of the 500 millibar heights, and then it shows mean sea level pressure. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this. So what's the Euro show? It's kind of hard to see, but the Euro showing on today's run, excuse me, this is the 12Z run, 992 millibars initialized, drops it to 979 in 24 hours, and then it starts to weaken it again. Remember, we're looking at just, let me see actually if the 3-hour frames are in. Yeah, there's enough of them. So the Euro, this is helpful, does strengthen it, 979 in there. Actually, it skips over that one. Isn't that convenient? But the Euro does show strengthening, and I think it could strengthen more than what we're seeing, again, because of that favorable jet interaction. But then the Euro weakens it, gets it close to Bermuda, and then we don't have enough frames after that. So let's jump back over to the EC Fast, and you see what happens. It takes it on out of there. We're at a week out from there. Now let's go back to the GFS real quick. Some chatter, people talking about it a little bit more on social media, Storm 2K, elsewhere, that maybe after Tammy, and we still have to deal with Tammy, no doubt, something else could try to get going. I'm going to use blue to make things pop a little better. Somewhere around here after about a week's time. And normally we don't worry about stuff a week out or more, but just to show you, as we advance through, the pattern starts to get favorable so that by day 10, something tries to close off here, disturbed weather in the Eastern Caribbean, a very stout ridge of high pressure up to the north. Normally when you see one of these situations where you have high pressure to the north, a lowering of pressures to the south, the overall pattern, that is a setup. The pattern is there for something to try to develop. And that is very, very important. So again, don't worry about the details. Does something actually form out of this? Do whatever it's going to do, and we have something to track. Look for the pattern first. It's very much like you see in sports. You build a solid team in whatever it is first, and then try to win the championships. You understand? Sports and weather, much more connected than people give it credit for. So we got to see if the pattern's going to be there. Large pieces of the overall puzzle, the high pressure, whatever, the details, tropical cyclones, individual storms, we worry about that later. But the pattern looks like it's going to try to become more favorable over the next week to 10 days, and we'll end on looking at the upper levels at that period of time. 200 millibars, yes, the pattern looks very favorable in the Caribbean. So let's see if that actually happens, especially considering we've got that El Nino going on in the equatorial Pacific. All right? Finally, it's hard to believe it's already been, 18 years now? Something like that? Yeah, 18 years ago. It says it right in the tweet, Mark. From the National Weather Service, Key West. I was down there for this. The very first year of our remote cam system, and we had a couple of cameras there, one in Marco Island and one in Everglades City. They both captured pretty impressive storm surge, and that went on to really launch our overall growth of the remote camera project ever since that fateful 2005 season. How many of you remember Wilma? How many of you were down there during that? That was a very large eye, a very destructive hurricane as it went across South Florida. Our friend Jim Williams, his camera, permanent camera on his weather tower and radio tower over on the east side of Florida, capturing the eye. It's in our documentary. I'll put a link to it, Tracking the Hurricanes 2005, the Wilma chapter, the ending chapter of that epic 05 documentary that I put together a long time ago. Yeah, so that was today that this made landfall. So if you were born in October of 2005, you're 18 years old now. How about that? You're legally an adult. So there you go. All right, so we'll keep a close watch on things. Tammy, I got my money on it becoming a major hurricane before all is said and done. We shall see. Otis, of course, going to be heading towards Mexico with a formidable landfall. And then we're going to see what happens. Does the pattern start to become favorable again, resetting the clock, so to speak, to give us more action as we approach November of all months, something potentially developing in the Caribbean? We'll have to wait and see how it all shakes out together. All right? As always, thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it from all of us here at Hurricane Track. I'm Mark Sudduth, your host, so to speak. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.